turns to go till the end of the game, and we had some quite dramatic action in that last turn. The French wheeled around and attacked a Spanish brigade here, and they also attacked one of the Spanish brigades here. So they managed to right that one, but they're severely damaged themselves. This one resulted in a firefight, which actually completely destroyed that Spanish brigade. So that's completely off the map. Then the Spanish here retaliated with a combat of their own, which also was a firefight. No, sorry, no, they moved in. They I can't remember. I think it was I think they went into close combat. It didn't result in firefight, but they sustained enough losses themselves that they were routed, partly because they were routed because of the morale went down, partly because the guns there had dropped their morale as they went in. The guns managed to get out just by routing, and the French unit that was there was completely destroyed as well. When I say destroyed, the interesting thing in this game is that some units have taken lots of stragglers. Given time and given a sort of rest in the rear area, those units could come back into play, either completely if they're only straggler losses, or not, or partially. However, this is how the state of play is. This is the French and this is the Spanish. And the solid blocks are permanent losses, the strikes are stragglers. So you can see the French have taken quite a beating. And these are wrecked brigades. Ruffin's division, that's this one here, is completely wrecked. So it's more likely to withdraw and they get minuses on morale. These are two wrecked brigades. The Spanish, on the other hand, this is the army of Asturias, that army that's fleeing back there. So this one just went in, it was completely unscathed. One combat, it lost all of that. So devastating results. So that's lost. That's just going to have to sort of draw out. These two have come off the board, and there's basically two sort of main defenders, and there's one that is preparing to come off the board. So the Spanish are still defending here and here. So there's two brigades here. There's some skirmishers there in the headquarters here. And Blake's trying to rally it. We just rallied a unit there. Then this one has been given orders to come off, but I don't think it's going to make it because it hasn't been accepting its orders. Likewise, the French are debilitated because this one hasn't been accepting its orders to go in for the attack. And neither, of course, did Ruffin's, but Ruffin was too busy defending himself, and now his brigade is completely wrecked. So they could still go into attack as wrecked brigades, but they're going to be very poor match for any defending. So I think what we're looking at the moment then is that the Spanish get a point for their cavalry, they will get a point for the guns, and 1 point for 3 brigades there. So that would be 3 victory points. I don't think he's got enough movement points to get off in his last 2 turns. So they'll get a basic 3 victory points, plus then whatever these yellow areas I've highlighted that they keep on the map. So I think they're still going to hold all this, which is just going to give the French 1, and then there's another victory point there, 2 victory points. So the French swung around here hoping to completely wreck this brigade. They might have a chance, so they're supposed to permanently wreck them, and I don't think they're gonna manage. That would have gained them some victory points, so it looks like it's going to be a Spanish victory. I will just play it out to conclusion now. One thing I forgot to mention is the French do have a big loss. Lepisse, their leader, died in that combat there. And here on the turn track you can see a Spanish and a French brigade that could come back. They're completely wrecked, no more boxes, but they won't. The game's going to end at this turn. And just to clarify, Lepisse is not the overall leader. That's Victor, who's down there. Okay, it's all over. I play the next turn. I'm not going to play the last turn because the French tried a last-ditch attempt to push through here to get into the town, and they completely lost one unit and another another routed. Back here they just consolidated a bit, and the Spanish in their turn decided to retreat what remaining they had. So the French wouldn't be able to get up there. That's the Spanish victory point. The French will keep this victory point. The Spanish are quite happy to stay where they are and have quite a resounding victory in that they trounced the French militarily, and they held their ground. So as the night falls on the 11th, what we find is that the if you see the black dots, probably the bulk of the permanent casualties, those black boxed off dots, are on the French side. So the Spanish, being in the town, they're going to recover a lot of the straggler strikes. Their force will be a lot stronger than any French force. Even if they recover, their straggler strikes will be the next day. But probably Blake will withdraw in the night rather than risk another fight. And he can do under somewhat of leisure, seeing as he holds the town. I will count up the victory points. So there we go. The Spanish got 10 victory points and the French 2. They got their 2 for territorial objectives. The Spanish got 4 for territory, 2 for wrecking a French division, and 3 for exiting units off the map. Now, the French, so the Spanish, they didn't permanently wreck, so this division, when stragglers recover, it could be unwrecked, but it was wrecked at the end of the game, so they got 2 points for that. The French would have got 2 points for permanently wrecking a Spanish division. That, I take it to mean that there's enough brigades within the division for the division to be wrecked, which essentially means, see, Del Norte is wrecked. It's got 3 brigades, and if 2 are wrecked, then that tick signifies that the division is wrecked. But so that division is wrecked. In fact, I should have notified that. But these 2 brigades, they're not permanently wrecked. You see there's a straggler here and 2 straggler marks there. So they're not permanently wrecked. If I think both those were permanently wrecked, then that would be permanently wrecked. It's not. The French would have got 3 VPs, I think, for that, but they didn't manage even that much. And so, the end of the game. This is my scribblings for the orders for the various units. Normally it would have to be sort of a bit more notification there, because you have to sort of write who gave it to whom and so forth, but obviously for a solo game it's fine. I know what was happening. But orders can be that as brief as that. Attack hill, then take Espinosa. I put M, that's because I'm playing Marengo. That's on my mind. To take Espinosa. And it was accepted at 11:30. You see, D5, that's on delay, so the French were still waiting for 2 divisions to accept orders, and the Spanish managed to accept all their orders. So essentially this battle was lost on the deleteriousness, how do you say that word? The dalliance, the dallying, the delaying of the French and their attack stoppages. So we had 3 or 4 attack stoppages from French attacks. 1 voluntary, so that was a voluntary withdrawal. But essentially, I do begin to question now if this game is too stacked against the attacker, because as a defender, you never roll for defence stoppage. So it's purely the player's decision if you're going to withdraw from a defence. But as an attacker, you every turn except for the first turn you accept those orders. You roll for attack stoppage, so it's out of the player control. And it's hard enough attacking as it is anyway. Most of, unless you're clever with manoeuvre, which I guess I wasn't here, and that can be tricky, because still, if you're clever with manoeuvre, so you're moving a lot, even without attacking, you might still gain attack stoppage on an unlucky roll. Perhaps I was just unlucky with those rolls. I didn't computate, the odds, how many rolls I made and how many fell within the average range, but so even if you're attacking with manoeuvre and you're not sustaining any casualties, an attack stoppage could be called in on that chance. So there's none of that on the defence side. So I do wonder about the attacker. And the other thing is that as an attacker, if you're physically moving into attack, you have to dislodge the defender. And as it is that it's easier to check to stand than it is to pass a normal morale check, which basically means that many close combats end up in a firefight. So the unit intends to push the other one out, but they end up standing next to each other and creating sort of lines of fire against them. And in that case, I think the odds were stacked against the French, because, for example, the Spanish had many bigger some bigger units, not lots, which meant that they could, in a firefight, they could sustain the losses longer than the French, and so those units would stand longer. But it's interesting how it's all worked out, because some units, this unit has a whole line of strength points, but it becomes wrecked at this point. Whereas, for example, this unit, okay, maybe it's relatively the same. It becomes wrecked after only 2 losses. But then this one's quite a big unit, but it becomes wrecked after 3 losses. Whereas this one, which is the same size, becomes wrecked after 5 losses. So, there's things factored in according to quality of troops and the sort of morale of the troops in that way, as well as purely in their naked morale level. So it's a lot of, I really like this game for all that subtlety and everything that's baked into it. It feels like it's a system that has matured itself in that respect. However, it is a bit annoying in that there are ambiguities within the rules, and I think it's partly because it's generally considered, it's not a competitive game, because you can't really be competitive when you're sending an attack and on the random roll it just goes back. So it's more sort of the narrative of the play rather than the competition of it. However, but that might have meant that some of the rules writing was not quite as tight as it could be. So, for example, in this game I picked up a couple of niggly things, like nowhere could I find, if we have some very steep terrain and roads going over them. Now, normally I understand that roads, if you're moving on road movement, that negates the terrain. But then somewhere else in the treatment of slopes, something there that I read suggested that the slopes add to any other terrain. So it says that you add that to the other terrain cost. Now then which one applies, which one supersedes the other. So I played half of this whereby even if you're on a road, if it's going up a steep incline, you're going to pay the cost of the slope, albeit on the road movement rate. Then the other half of the game I decided it was the other way, and I said, okay, you're on a road, you just pay the road movement rate, so you could zip around up and down the steep hills as fast as you like. So it's things like that which are a bit unclear, and if the game had continued and continued into more iterations, that would need to be tightened up to make it a thoroughly enjoyable thing. As it is thoroughly enjoyable. It's great fun. It's just it's got some of those little picky bits, but yeah, I really enjoyed this game. It was exciting, and I'm sorry the French didn't make it through. They were unlucky, but then taking that into account, I mean, they had a difficult situation anyway. If they'd all been on the board at the start, then there could have been a bit more sort of planning and manoeuvring, but as they came on in bit by bit, they didn't really have enough forces to back up attacks that faltered early on, and then they just didn't get into acceptance. It might have changed things. I think if these had accepted orders sooner and or Ruffin, then they might have been able to get into Espinosa. But they would have been battered as the fighting had gone, and so I think the Spanish still might have pipped a little win that way.